Hey guys, tonight we wander into the vibrant, labyrinthine streets of Edo City that would one day become Tokyo, where the air hums with the chatter of merchants, the clatter of wooden sandals, and the subtle, intoxicating scent of incense mingling with fresh river water. You find yourself stepping carefully through the crowded pleasure quarters, where the courtesans reign supreme, not just as entertainers, but as trendsetters whose hairstyles speak louder than words. Imagine the soft rustle of silk kimonos brushing against polished wooden floors, the faint clink of kanzashi hairpins, and the flicker of paper lanterns casting warm glows on faces framed by towering, intricate coiffures. It's a world where hair isn't just hair, it's a language, a status symbol, and sometimes a secret weapon. Now, before you get too cozy, here's a cheeky reality check. You probably won't survive the next 2 hours of this hair-obsessed journey without feeling a little sleepy, a little fascinated, and maybe a bit overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of Edo-era courtesan hair rules. But hey, that's the point, right? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's always fun to see where in the world we're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. In Edo, the pleasure quarters known as the yukaku were buzzing microcosms of culture and commerce, where courtesans or oiran were the celebrities of their day. These women weren't just pretty faces. They were skilled conversationalists, artists, and fashion icons whose every move was scrutinized and emulated. Their hairstyles, in particular, were elaborate masterpieces that took hours to create and days to maintain. You trudge through the narrow alleys lined with wooden tea houses and lantern-lit storefronts, eyes drawn upward to the towering hairdos that seem to defy gravity itself. The global fact here is that the Edo period, spanning from 1603 to 1868, was a time of relative peace and isolation in Japan, allowing arts and culture, including the courtesan culture, to flourish in unique ways. The Tokugawa shogunate's strict social order meant that courtesans occupied a very specific niche, and their hairstyles became a visual shorthand for their rank and profession. But here's the quirky tidbit. These hairstyles weren't just about beauty or status. Some historians still argue whether certain hair arrangements were designed to subtly signal availability or to ward off evil spirits. Imagine that your hairdo doubling as a social text and a spiritual shield. Talk about multitasking. As you continue down the lantern-lit street, you notice the delicate balance between tradition and flamboyance in every twist and pin of hair. The courtesan's hair was their crown, their armor, and their artle rolled into one. And as the night deepens, you realize you're not just observing history, you're stepping into a living, breathing world where every strand tells a story. As you settle deeper into the winding streets of Edo's pleasure quarters, your eyes can't help but linger on the towering, intricate hairstyles that crown the courtesans like living sculptures. But where did these elaborate coiffures come from? The origins of courtesan hairstyles are a fascinating blend of practicality, cultural symbolism, and evolving fashion trends that transformed simple hair arrangements into extravagant statements of beauty and power. In the early days of the Edo period, hairstyles among women were relatively modest, shaped by the practical needs of daily life. But as the pleasure quarters grew in prominence, so did the desire to stand out. Courtesans began to experiment, drawing inspiration from samurai styles, theatrical traditions, and even Buddhist iconography. The result was a dazzling array of coiffures that became increasingly complex and symbolic. The mainstream historical fact here is that the Shimada style, originally a simple bun worn by married women, evolved into a signature look for young courtesans and geisha alike. This style involved pulling the hair back into a high bun, often adorned with decorative pins and combs. Over time, variations like the Taka Shimada, High Shimada, and Tsubushi Shimada, flattened Shimada, emerged, each carrying its own social and aesthetic connotations. But here's the quirky twist. Some scholars still debate whether certain extravagant hair shapes were inspired by the shapes of traditional Japanese fans, or even the curves of famous kabuki actors' wigs. Imagine that your hairstyle secretly channeling the latest theatre craze, or the flutter of a fan. It's like Edo's version of a celebrity endorsement, but with hair. You trudge past a group of apprentices, their hairstyles simpler, but no less meaningful, marking their status as Maiko in training. Their hair is a canvas in progress, hinting at the elaborate styles they will one day master. The evolution from practical to artistic hairdos mirrors the courtesan's own journey from novices to celebrated figures in Edo society. And as you watch a hairstylist deftly twisting and pinning a courtesan's hair into place, you realize these styles were more than fashion. They were a language, a social code, and a living tradition passed down through generations. The origins of these hairstyles are a testament to Edo's unique blend of artistry and social complexity, where every coil and ornament carried meaning. So, as you drift further into this world, remember that behind every towering hairstyle lies a story of transformation, creativity, and a touch of theatrical flair that still captivates imaginations today. You find yourself watching as the hairstylist begins to craft the iconic Shimada hairstyle, the signature look that defines the young courtesans of Edo's pleasure quarters. This style is more than just a fashion statement. It's a carefully constructed symbol of youth, beauty, and status, with variations that tell subtle stories about the wearer's place in the social hierarchy. The Shimada starts with the hair gathered high atop the head, pulled into a smooth, rounded bun. The stylist works with practiced hands, twisting and pinning strands into place, creating a shape that is both elegant and commanding. The most common form, the Taka Shimada, features a high, voluminous bun that seems to defy gravity, balanced perfectly with delicate kanzashi hairpins that sparkle in the soft light. This was the go-to style for young courtesans, signaling their readiness to charm and captivate. A mainstream historical fact is that the Shimada hairstyle was not exclusive to courtesans. It was also popular among married women of the samurai class. However, courtesans adapted and exaggerated the style, making it taller, more elaborate, and adorned with distinctive accessories that set them apart. This adaptation was a way to assert their unique identity within Edo's strict social order. Here's a quirky tidbit. The process of creating the Shimada involved a ritualistic element where the hairstylist would use a special wooden comb made from boxwood believed to bring good luck and ward off evil spirits. Some historians still argue whether this comb was purely practical or held deeper spiritual significance. Imagine your hairstylist doubling as a kind of hair shaman, blessing your coiffure as they work. As you watch, you notice the hairstylist's assistant carefully applies wax made from natural ingredients, like fish oil and camelliato, keep the hair smooth and in place. The smell is faint but distinct, a mix of earthiness and something almost medicinal. The whole process takes hours, a testament to the patience and skill required to maintain such an elaborate look. The shimada is more than just a hairstyle, it's a performance, a daily act of transformation that turns a young woman into an icon of Edo's pleasure quarters. Every twist and pin carries meaning, every accessory a message. And as you continue to observe, you realize that this hairdo is a living tradition, a delicate balance of art, culture, and social signaling that still fascinates historians and hair enthusiasts alike. The delicate clink of metal catches your attention as you watch the courtesan's hands adjust the final touches of her hairstyle ornate hairpins and kanzashi, glinting like tiny jewels woven into the intricate tapestry of her hair. These accessories are not mere decorations, they are secret codes, social signals, and sometimes even talismans, each carefully chosen to convey a message in the subtle dance of Edo's pleasure quarters. Kanzashi come in countless shapes and sizes, slender sticks, elaborate combs, and floral motifs carved from tortoiseshell, lacquer, or precious metals. The choice of kanzashi was far from random. For example, certain flowers represented seasons or virtue cherry blossoms for fleeting beauty, chrysanthemums for longevity. Courtesans would change their kanzashi daily to reflect the season or special occasions, turning their hair into a living calendar. A mainstream historical fact is that kanzashi were a significant part of Edo fashion, worn not only by courtesans but also by women across social classes. However, the pleasure quarters elevated these accessories to an art form, with some courtesans owning collections worth a small fortune. The kanzashi maker's craft was highly respected, blending artistry with symbolism. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some kanzashi were designed with hidden compartments or sharp edges, used as discreet weapons or tools of seduction. Historians still argue whether these multifunctional hairpins were common or just the stuff of legend. Imagine your hairpin doubling as a secret dagger or a love token talk about practical fashion. You notice the courtesan delicately adjusting a kanzashi shaped like a crane, a symbol of good fortune and fidelity. The craftsmanship is exquisite, with tiny feathers carved in fine detail. The hairpin's presence is both an aesthetic flourish and a subtle statement about the wearer's hopes and status. The kanzashi also played a role in social signaling. For example, the number and arrangement of hairpins could indicate a courtesan's rank or availability, a silent language understood by those in the know. It's like texting with your hair, but with much higher stakes and far more elegance. As you continue to watch, you realize that these tiny accessories are powerful storytellers, weaving together beauty, tradition, and intrigue in the complex social fabric of Edo's pleasure quarters. And in this world, every glint of metal in a hairstyle is a whisper, a secret, a promise. You lean in closer, intrigued by the glossy sheen that keeps the courtesan's towering hairstyle perfectly in place, as if defying gravity and the chaos of the bustling Edo streets. The secret behind this miraculous hold? A concoction of waxes and pomades, crafted from natural ingredients that might make a modern hair care enthusiast raise an eyebrow, or perhaps a cautious eyebrow. Historical records tell us that courtesans used a blend of ingredients like fish oil, camellia oil, and even the rendered fat of animals to create a sticky, glossy substance that not only held the hair firm, but also gave it a subtle shine. This wasn't just about aesthetics. The wax also protected the hair from the elements, which, in a city often damp with river mist and rain, was a practical necessity. Here's where it gets a bit quirky. Some recipes reportedly included ingredients like sake or sake lees, believed to nourish the hair and add fragrance. Historians still argue whether these recipes were standardized or varied wildly between districts and individual hairdressers. Imagine your hairstylist mixing up a batch of Edo hair wax in the back room, experimenting with fish oil and rice wine like a mad scientist of beauty. The process was labor-intensive. After washing and drying, the hair was coated with this waxy mixture, then carefully styled and pinned. The wax hardened slightly as it cooled, locking every strand into place. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Too much wax could weigh the hair down or make it smell overpowering, while too little meant the hairstyle might collapse under the weight of its own ambition. You can almost smell the faint earthy aroma of the pomade mingling with the scent of incense and cherry blossoms drifting through the air. It's a sensory cocktail that transports you back to those Edo streets, where beauty and practicality collided in the most unexpected ways. And here's a little scholarly debate to chew on. Some researchers suggest that these natural waxes might have actually helped preserve hair health better than some modern synthetic products, thanks to their nourishing ingredients. Others argue that the heavy use of animal fats could have led to scalp issues. So, as you imagine the courtesan's hair shining under the lantern light, you're also reminded that beauty rituals have always been a balancing act between glamour and grit. In any case, the wax and pomade mystery adds another layer to the complex art of Edo-era hairstyling, blend of chemistry, craft, and a touch of alchemy that kept those magnificent coiffures standing tall through the night. You follow the subtle shift in hairstyles as you pass a group of young apprentices, the Maiko, who are still learning the ropes of Edo's intricate courtesan culture. Their hair is simpler, less adorned, but no less meaningful a clear sign of their status as novices on the path to becoming full-fledged courtesans. Watching them is like seeing the first brush strokes of a masterpiece in progress, each style a step toward the elaborate art they will one day perfect. Maiko hairstyles were deliberately less complex, often featuring a single large bun with minimal adornment. This simplicity was a visual cue, signaling their apprentice status to patrons and peers alike. The Wear Shinobu style, for example, involved a parted front with a single large bun tied with red silk ribonza, stark contrast to the towering shimada of the seasoned courtesans. It was a style that balanced youthful innocence with the promise of sophistication. A mainstream historical fact is that the apprenticeship system was rigorous and hierarchical, with Maiko spending years mastering not only hairstyles, but also dance, music, and conversation. Their hair was a public marker of their progress, changing as they advanced through different stages of training. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Maiko would decorate their hair with seasonal flowers made from silk or paper, which were swapped out daily to reflect the changing seasons and festivals. Historians still argue whether these floral decorations were purely aesthetic or carried deeper symbolic meanings related to luck and protection. Imagine having your hairstyle change like a living calendar, marking time with petals and leaves. The rituals around hair care for Maiko were just as strict as for courtesans. They often had to sleep with special pillows designed to protect their hairstyles, and hair washing was a rare and carefully timed event to avoid ruining the delicate arrangements. You can almost feel the discomfort of lying still all night, balancing a towering hairstyle that could collapse with the slightest movement. You notice the pride in the apprentices' eyes as they practice their hairstyles under the watchful gaze of senior courtesans and hairstylists. Their hair is not just a fashion statement, it's a badge of honor, a symbol of dedication, and a promise of the dazzling future that awaits. As you watch the apprentices, you realize that these simpler hairstyles are the foundation of a complex tradition, a visual story of growth and transformation that mirrors the courtesan's own journey through Edo's vibrant pleasure quarters. You notice how the courtesan's hairstyles are not just about beauty or status. They're a complex social language, a silent code that speaks volumes about everything from romantic availability to rank shifts within the pleasure quarters. Every twist, every pin, every accessory is a carefully calibrated signal, a way to communicate without uttering a single word in the bustling, crowded streets of Edo. The mainstream historical fact here is that hairstyles were indeed used as social signals in Edo's pleasure districts. For example, a courtesan might subtly change her hairstyle or the arrangement of her kanzashi to indicate whether she was available for new clients or already spoken for. These visual cues helped navigate the complex social dynamics of the yukaku, where reputation and discretion were paramount. But here's a quirky twist. Some scholars still debate whether certain hair arrangements were deliberately designed to confuse rival courtesans or to send secret messages to favored patrons. Imagine a hairstyle as a cryptic puzzle, with hidden meanings only understood by insiders. It's like a hair-based game of chess, where every move counts. You observe a courtesan adjusting a small cluster of hairpins, knowing that this tiny change could signal a shift in her social standing or romantic status. The stakes are high. Misreading these signals could lead to social faux pas or lost opportunities. It's a delicate dance where hair is both armor and invitation. The social signaling extends beyond romantic availability. Hairstyles also marked rank within the courtesan hierarchy. Senior courtesans sported more elaborate, heavier styles with intricate accessories, while lower-ranked women wore simpler arrangements. This visual hierarchy helped maintain order and respect within the pleasure quarters. You can almost hear the unspoken conversations carried out through hair whispers of rivalry, alliances, and secret romancesul, encoded in the placement of a pin or the curve of a bun. It's a fascinating reminder that in Edo, hair was more than just decoration. It was a vital part of social navigation. As you continue to watch, you realize that understanding these hair signals was essential for survival and success in the pleasure quarters. The courtesans' hairstyles were a language of power, seduction, and social strategy woven into every strand. You find yourself drawn to the quieter moments behind the scenes, where courtesans engage in surprisingly strict and ritualized hair washing routines that seem almost sacred compared to the hustle of the pleasure quarters. Maintaining those elaborate hairstyles was no easy feat, especially when shampoo as we know it didn't exist, and washing hair meant risking the collapse of hours of intricate work. The mainstream historical fact is that courtesans often went days, sometimes weeks, without washing their hair, relying instead on dry cleaning methods like brushing and applying fragrant powders. When it was time for a wash, it was a carefully planned event, usually done by specialized hairdressers who knew how to handle the delicate styles without destroying them. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some courtesans used rinses made from rice water or green tea, believed to strengthen hair and add shine. Historians still argue whether these rinses had significant cosmetic benefits or were more about tradition and superstition. Imagine rinsing your hair with leftover rice water sounds like a spa treatment gone ancient, right? The washing ritual itself was a slow, deliberate process. Hairdressers would first remove the wax and pomade using natural oils or alkaline solutions made from wood ash. Then the hair was gently rinsed and dried with cloths, avoiding any rough handling. Afterward, the hairstylist would painstakingly restyle the hair, sometimes using temporary supports like wooden frames to hold the shape while the wax set again. You can almost feel the tension and anticipation during these hair-washing days too frequent, and the courtesan risked damaging her precious hairstyle and social standing, too infrequent, and the hair could become greasy or unmanageable. It was a delicate balance, a dance between cleanliness and appearance. The ritual also had social implications. A courtesan's hair-washing schedule could signal her availability or mood. For example, a freshly washed and restyled hairdo might mean she was preparing for a special client or event, while a slightly disheveled style could indicate a day of rest or mourning. As you imagine the careful strokes and gentle rinses, you realize that hair washing in Edo's pleasure quarters was far more than hygienite, was a ritual imbued with meaning, care, and a touch of theatricality that kept the courtesan's elaborate hairstyles alive and thriving. You step behind the scenes to glimpse the world of the hairstylists, the unsung artisans, who wielded combs and pins like magicians, transforming ordinary hair into towering works of art. These stylists, often women themselves, held a unique position in Edo's pleasure quarters, combining technical skill, artistic vision, and a deep understanding of social codes. Their hands shaped not just hair, but the very identity of the courtesans they served. A mainstream historical fact is that hairstylists, known as Tokoyama, were highly trained professionals who often apprenticed for years before mastering the complex styles demanded by the pleasure quarters. Their expertise was essential. A poorly styled shimada or misaligned kanzashi could spell social disaster for a courtesan. Tokoyama was so respected that some achieved celebrity status, their names whispered with admiration among patrons and courtesans alike. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Tokoyama developed secret techniques and recipes for hair wax and pomade, closely guarding these trade secrets like alchemists protecting their formulas. Historians still argue whether these recipes were passed down within families or traded among stylists, but the mystique surrounding their craft added to their allure. Imagine a hairstylist as part artist, part chemist, part magician, mixing potions and weaving spells with every comb stroke. You watch as a Tokoyama works with serene focus, her fingers deftly twisting strands, securing pins, and adjusting ornaments with precision. The process is almost meditative, a dance of hands and hair that demands patience and finesse. She occasionally steps back to assess her work, ensuring every detail aligns perfectly with tradition and the courtesan's rank. The hairstylist's role extended beyond mere aesthetics. They often advised courtesans on fashion trends, social signaling, and even personal grooming habits. In a way, they were confidants and strategists, shaping not just appearances but careers. You can almost hear the quiet camaraderie and whispered advice exchanged in the back rooms, where stylists shared stories, tricks, and the occasional gossip. Their work was a blend of art, science, and social savvy, essential to the vibrant culture of Edo's pleasure quarters. As you watch the Tokoyama's skilled hands bring the hairstyle to life, you realize that these hairstylists were the invisible architects of Edo's beauty culture, crafting not just hair, but the very image of elegance and power that defined the courtesan world. You notice the subtle shifts in the courtesans' hairstyles as the seasons change, like a delicate dance between nature and fashion that keeps Edo's pleasure quarters in sync with the world outside. These seasonal hair trends weren't just about aesthetics, they were a way for courtesans to express their connection to the cycles of nature and to signal their awareness of cultural rhythms that everyone in Edo respected. A mainstream historical fact is that courtesans would incorporate seasonal motifs into their hairstyles, often through the choice of kanzashi. For example, plum blossoms in early spring, wisteria in late spring, and maple leaves in autumn adorned their hair, reflecting the natural beauty of each season. These changes were carefully timed and followed a well-established calendar, making the courtesan's hair a living reflection of the year's passage. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some kanzashi were designed to mimic not just flowers, but insects like dragonflies or butterflies, symbolizing transformation and fleeting beauty. Historians still argue whether these insect motifs were purely decorative or carried deeper superstitions about luck and protection. Imagine your hair buzzing with tiny, delicate creatures nature's own accessories. You watch as a courtesan delicately swaps out her cherry blossom kanzashi for a set of autumnal maple leaves, the colors shifting from soft pinks to fiery reds. The change is subtle but powerful, signaling to onlookers that summer has passed and autumn's cool embrace is here. It's a reminder that even in the world of pleasure and glamour, time marches on and beauty must adapt. The seasonal hair trends also extended to the hairstyles themselves. In summer, courtesans might opt for slightly lighter styles to cope with the heat, while winter called for more elaborate, insulating arrangements. This practical adaptation shows a fascinating blend of fashion and function. You can almost feel the gentle breeze carrying the scent of seasonal flowers as you watch these transformations, a sensory reminder of Edo's deep appreciation for nature's cycles. The courtesan's hair becomes a canvas for the changing world, a subtle celebration of life's impermanence. As you continue observing, you realize that these seasonal hair trends were more than mere decoration. They were a way for courtesans to participate in the cultural heartbeat of Edo, weaving nature's rhythms into the very fabric of their identity. You begin to notice a fascinating tension in the courtesan's hairstyles' delicate balancing act between personal expression and the strict hair codes imposed by Edo's rigid social order. While their coiffures were bound by tradition and rank, within those boundaries, courtesans found subtle ways to assert their individuality, making their hair a canvas for both conformity and creativity. The mainstream historical fact is that Edo's pleasure quarters operated under strict regulations that dictated everything from clothing to hairstyles, ensuring that social hierarchies remained visible and respected. For example, certain hairstyles and accessories were reserved for courtesans of specific ranks, and violating these rules could lead to social penalties or loss of status. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some courtesans would sneak in tiny, personalized touches like a uniquely shaped kanzashi or a slightly altered bun shape that allowed them to stand out without breaking the rules outright. Historians still argue how widespread this subtle rebellion was, but it's clear that hair became a quiet form of self-expression amid strict societal expectations. Imagine a hairstyle as your secret signature, a whisper of your personality hidden in plain sight. You watch as a courtesan adjusts a small, unusual hairpin its design, unlike any you've seen before, and you realize she's making a statement. It's a reminder that even in a world governed by rules, creativity finds a way to bloom. This tension between individuality and conformity made the courtesan's hairstyles dynamic and ever-evolving. The hair codes also reflected the courtesans' complex identities. They were both entertainers and social figures, bound by duty yet yearning for personal freedom. Their hairstyles embodied this duality, blending tradition with innovation, public image with private desire. You can almost sense the silent conversations carried out through these subtle hair variations of language of rebellion, identity, and artistry woven into every coil and pin. It's a testament to human creativity, thriving within constraints. As you continue to observe, you realize that the courtesan's hair was more than just fashionette, was a living dialogue between society and self, a beautiful paradox that defined Edo's pleasure quarters. As you linger in the dim glow of the lantern-lit streets, you catch whispers of stories where hair becomes more than decoration. It becomes a weapon, a tool of power, and even a secret messenger within the intricate world of Edo's pleasure quarters. It's strange to think that something as delicate as a strand of hair could carry such weight, but in this world, hair was a versatile and potent symbol. A mainstream historical fact is that courtesans sometimes used their hair to send secret messages or signals. For example, the arrangement of hairpins, or the way a bun was tied, could convey information about alliances, rivalries, or romantic interests. This silent communication was essential in a society where discretion was prized and spoken words could be overheard or misunderstood. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some tales suggest that courtesans used strands of their own hair as tokens of affection or even as part of secret codes exchanged with favored patrons. Historians still argue whether these stories are fact or romanticized legend, but the idea of hair as a tangible symbol of intimacy adds a fascinating layer to its cultural significance. Imagine receiving a lock of hair as a love letter talk about personal and permanent. There are also stories of hair being used in more dramatic ways. Some courtesans reportedly fashion their hairpins into makeshift weapons for self-defense, a practical necessity in a world where danger could lurk behind the beauty. While historians debate how common this was, the image of a hairpin doubling as a dagger adds a thrilling edge to the otherwise delicate art of hairstyling. You watch a courtesan subtly adjust a hairpin, aware that this small movement might carry a hidden message to a confidant across the room. The power of hair in this context is both intimate and strategic a tool in the complex social games of Edo's pleasure quarters. As you reflect on these stories, you realize that hair was more than a fashion statement. It was a dynamic instrument of communication, protection, and influence. In the hands of Edo's courtesans, hair was a weapon of beauty and power, woven into the fabric of their lives in ways both subtle and profound. You begin to notice subtle signs of change creeping into the world of Edo's courtesans, their towering hairstyles, slowly giving way to simpler, more Western-influenced fashions as the 19th century unfolds. The decline of these elaborate hair customs is a story of modernization, cultural shifts, and the inevitable march of time that reshaped Japan's identity. A mainstream historical fact is that the Meiji Restoration, beginning in 1868, ushered in rapid westernization and modernization across Japan. Traditional customs, including the elaborate hairstyles of courtesans, were increasingly seen as outdated. The government even encouraged Western dress and grooming styles as symbols of progress, leading to the gradual disappearance of Edo-era hair fashions. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some courtesans reportedly resisted these changes by secretly maintaining their traditional hairstyles in private, while publicly adopting simpler looks to avoid scrutiny. Historians still argue how widespread this quiet rebellion was, but it adds a poignant note to the story of cultural transition. Imagine sneaking out your towering hairpins under the cover of night, clinging to a fading tradition. You watch as the once elaborate shimada bun is replaced by more modest styles, and kanzashi give way to Western hats and bonnets. The streets of Edo, soon to be Tokyo, begin to reflect a new era, where the old and new coexist uneasily. The decline of Edo hairstyles also reflects broader social changes. The pleasure quarters themselves were transformed, with courtesans losing some of their former status as Japan embraced modernity. Hair, once a symbol of power and identity, became a casualty of progress. Yet, even as these styles faded from daily life, their influence lingered in art, theatre, and cultural memory. Ukiyo-e prints and kabuki performances preserved the image of the courtesan's elaborate coiffure, immortalizing a world that was slipping away. As you contemplate this transition, you realize that the decline of Edo hairstyles is not just about fashion, it's a story of cultural resilience and adaptation, a bittersweet farewell to a uniquely beautiful chapter in Japan's history. You find yourself drawn into the curious intersection between courtesan hairstyles and the tattoo culture of Edo world, where ink and hair both served as powerful markers of identity, rebellion, and social belonging. While at first glance these two forms of expression might seem worlds apart, They share intriguing connections that reveal the complexity of Edo society. A mainstream historical fact is that tattoos, or irazumi, were popular among certain groups in Edo, including firemen, labourers, and sometimes members of the underworld. Tattoos were often bold, colourful, and symbolic, representing protection, strength, or affiliation. Meanwhile, courtesans' hairstyles were intricate, delicate, and socially codified. Both served as visual statements of identity, though in very different social contexts. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars suggest that certain motifs found in courtesan kanzashai-like dragons, phoenixes, or pioneer-seichoed popular tattoo designs, creating a subtle visual dialogue between these two worlds. Historians still argue whether this overlap was intentional or coincidental, but it's fascinating to imagine a courtesan's hair accessories mirroring the bold ink on a fireman's arm. You watch as a courtesan adjusts a kanzashi shaped like a fierce dragon, its scales and claws captured in exquisite detail. This accessory not only enhances her beauty, but also projects strength and mystique, qualities often celebrated in tattoo art. It's a reminder that both hair and ink were tools for storytelling and self-expression in Edo. The connection between hairstyles and tattoos also highlights the complex social boundaries of the time. Tattoos were often stigmatized, associated with criminals or outcasts, while courtesans occupied a liminal space both admired and marginalized. Their shared use of symbolic imagery reflects the layered identities people navigated in Edo society. As you reflect on this overlap, you realize that hair and tattoos, though different in form, both served as canvases for personal and cultural narratives. They were ways to claim identity, assert power, and communicate messages in a world where appearance was everything. In this light, the courtesan's hairstyle is not just a fashion statement, but part of a broader tapestry of Edo's visual culture where beauty, rebellion, and symbolism intertwine in unexpected ways. You find yourself immersed in the vibrant world of ukiyo-e prints and Edo literature, where courtesan hairstyles are immortalized in swirling lines and delicate brushstrokes, blending fact and fantasy into a visual and narrative feast. These artistic depictions didn't just capture hairstyles, they shaped public imagination, turning the courtesan's coiffure into a symbol of allure, mystery, and cultural identity. A mainstream historical fact is that ukiyo-e, the popular woodblock prints of Edo, often featured courtesans as subjects, showcasing their elaborate hairstyles and fashion. Artists like Kitagawa Utamaro and Suzuki Harunobu celebrated the beauty and elegance of these women, sometimes exaggerating hairstyles to emphasize their grandeur and social significance. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ukiyo-e prints depict impossible hairstyles towering several feet high, adorned with fantastical ornaments like miniature temples or mythical creatures. Historians still argue whether these exaggerations were playful artistic license or symbolic representations of the courtesan's elevated status. Imagine a hairdo so tall it could double as real estate talk about living large. In Edo literature, courtesans and their hairstyles often appear as metaphors for fleeting beauty and the transient pleasures of life. Poems and stories would describe the rustle of silk and the shimmer of hairpins as part of the sensory tapestry of the pleasure quarters, blending reality with romanticized fantasy. You can almost hear the soft rustle of paper as you leaf through these prints and texts, feeling the pulse of Edo's cultural heartbeat. The courtesan's hairstyle becomes a character in its own right, embodying the tensions between appearance and reality, tradition and change. These artistic portrayals also influenced fashion trends beyond the pleasure quarters, as commoners and even samurai sought to emulate the courtesan's styles, spreading their influence throughout Edo society. As you continue to explore these visual and literary worlds, you realize that the courtesan's hairstyle was more than a personal statement. It was a cultural icon, a muse for artists and writers, and a lasting symbol of Edo's rich and complex history. As you delve deeper into the world of Edo courtesan hair care, you uncover the surprising science behind their beauty rituals, natural ingredients and techniques that protected their hair from damage and kept those elaborate styles looking fresh. It's a fascinating blend of folk wisdom and practical chemistry, long before the age of commercial shampoos and conditioners. The mainstream historical fact is that courtesans used oils like Camellia tsubaki oil, known for its moisturizing properties, to keep their hair glossy and healthy. Camellia oil is still prized in Japan today for hair care, and its use dates back centuries. Alongside oils, they employed rinses made from rice water, which contains nutrients believed to strengthen hair and improve texture. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some courtesans used a paste made from ground charcoal and persimmon tannins as a natural cleanser and conditioner. Historians still argue whether this was widespread or limited to certain districts, but the idea of scrubbing your hair with charcoal paste definitely adds a rustic charm to Edo's beauty secrets. Imagine a spa day with a side of soot. The techniques were equally important. Courtesans avoided harsh rubbing and instead used gentle brushing with wooden combs to detangle hair, preventing breakage. They also protected their hair from sun damage by wearing silk scarves or hats when outdoors, understanding the importance of shielding their precious styles from the elements. You can almost feel the smoothness of the camellia oil as it's massaged into the scalp, the subtle scent mingling with the fragrances of incense and cherry blossoms. The care and attention given to hair health were as much about preserving beauty as they were about maintaining the social status that came with it. This blend of natural science and artistry highlights the courtesan's sophisticated approach to grooming, combining tradition with practical knowledge. It's a reminder that beauty rituals have always been deeply tied to culture, environment, and innovation. As you imagine these ancient hair care practices, you realize that Edo's courtesans were not just fashion icons, they were early pioneers of holistic hair health, blending nature and nurture in ways that continue to inspire modern beauty routines. You find yourself intrigued by the curious beliefs and superstitions surrounding courtesan hairstyles in Edo, where hair was thought to influence not just beauty, but health and fortune. These hair-related myths added an extra layer of meaning to the already complex world of coiffure, blending the practical with the mystical in ways that might make you raise an eyebrow or smile. A mainstream historical fact is that many Edo-era Japanese believed that hair was connected to one's vitality and spiritual well-being. For example, it was thought that cutting hair at certain times could affect health or luck, and that hairstyles could ward off evil spirits. This belief wasn't unique to courtesans, but was particularly significant given their public visibility and social roles. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some courtesans followed the superstition that wearing their hair in the Taka Shimada style would bring good fortune and protect against illness. Others believed that certain kanzashi designs could influence romantic luck or even fertility. Historians still argue how seriously these beliefs were taken versus how much they were part of theatrical presentation. Imagine styling your hair not just for looks, but as a charm against bad luck talk about multitasking. The rituals around hair care often included prayers or offerings to hair-related deities or spirits, blending Shinto and Buddhist traditions. Courtesans might visit shrines to pray for healthy hair or protection, underscoring the spiritual dimension of their beauty routines. You can almost feel the tension between superstition and style as you picture a courtesan carefully selecting her hairpins, hoping they carry more than just aesthetic value. These beliefs gave hair an almost magical significance, making every strand a bearer of hope and protection. As you reflect on these hair and health myths, you realize that Edo's courtesans lived in a world where beauty was deeply intertwined with spirituality and fate. Their hairstyles were not just fashion statements, but talismans woven with intention and belief. This fascinating blend of myth and reality adds depth to the story of Edo's hair rules, reminding you that in history, as in life, appearance often carries meanings far beyond the surface. You catch the murmurs of Edo men's perspectives on courtesan hairstyles, an intriguing mix of admiration, envy, and complicated social dynamics that shaped the pleasure quarters atmosphere. For these men, the courtesan's hair was more than a fashion statement. It was a symbol of beauty, power, and sometimes a source of personal conflict. A mainstream historical fact is that male patrons of the pleasure quarters often admired the elaborate hairstyles as part of the courtesan's allure. These coiffures were designed to captivate and impress, and men's fascination with them is well documented in diaries and literature from the period. The hair was a key element in the courtesan's charm, enhancing her mystique and status. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some men reportedly felt a twinge of envy or insecurity when faced with the courtesan's towering hairstyles, which could be taller than their own heads. Historians still debate whether this envy was a genuine social phenomenon or exaggerated in stories to add colour to the courtesan's legend. Imagine feeling outdone by someone's hairdo talk about a hair-raising ego challenge. The hairstyles also played a role in social dynamics beyond attraction. For example, samurai and merchants might use their ability to access certain courtesans with specific hairstyles as a status symbol, reflecting their wealth and influence. The hair became a kind of social currency, linking beauty with power. You can almost hear the whispered conversations among patrons, speculating about the latest hair trends or the secrets behind a courtesan's latest kanzashi. Men's perceptions of these hairstyles influenced not just fashion, but the complex web of relationships within the pleasure quarters. As you reflect on these male perspectives, you realize that courtesan hairstyles were a focal point of admiration and social negotiation, a blend of desire, rivalry, and respect that added richness to Edo's cultural tapestry. In this world, hair was more than an accessory. It was a symbol charged with meaning, shaping interactions and identities in subtle but powerful ways. You find yourself stepping into the present, where the legacy of Edo's courtesan hairstyles lives on in surprising and vibrant ways. Modern Japan, with its blend of tradition and innovation, continues to honor and revive these elaborate hair customs through festivals, theater, and pop culture, keeping the spirit of Edo's pleasure quarters alive. A mainstream historical fact is that many traditional Japanese performing arts, such as kabuki and geisha culture, preserve the hairstyles and hair accessories of the Edo period. Actors and performers wear shimada styles and kanzashi that closely resemble those of historical courtesans, maintaining a living connection to the past. Here's a quirky tidbit. In contemporary Japan, some pop culture icons and fashion subcultures draw inspiration from Edo-era hairstyles, blending ancient aesthetics with modern flair. There are even hair salons that specialize in recreating these historical styles for special events or photo shoots. Historians still argue how authentic these modern recreations are, but they undeniably spark fascination and appreciation. Imagine walking into a salon and asking for a hairstyle that's part history lesson, part cosplay. You watch footage from festivals like the annual Jidai Matsuri in Kyoto, where participants don period costumes and hairstyles, parading through the streets in a vibrant homage to Japan's rich history. These events are not just celebrations, but acts of cultural preservation, bridging centuries through hair and dress. The legacy also extends to education and tourism. Museums and cultural centers offer workshops on Edo hairstyles, inviting visitors to experience firsthand the artistry and complexity that once defined the pleasure quarters. This hands-on approach brings history to life in a way that books and prints alone cannot. As you reflect on this living legacy, you realize that Edo's courtesan hairstyles are more than relics. They are dynamic symbols of cultural identity, creativity, and continuity. They remind us that history is not just something to study, but something to experience, celebrate, and carry forward. In this modern embrace of Edo's hair traditions, past and present intertwine, creating a rich tapestry that honors the beauty and complexity of a bygone era. As your journey through Edo's courtesan hairstyles draws to a close, you're left with a profound appreciation for the artistry, culture, and human stories woven into every strand. These towering coiffures were far more than mere fashion. They were living symbols of identity, power, tradition, and transformation in a world both beautiful and complex. The mainstream historical fact is that Edo's courtesan hairstyles represent a unique cultural phenomenon reflecting the social hierarchies, artistic innovation, and spiritual beliefs of their time. Their legacy endures not only in historical records, but also in Japan's vibrant cultural memory. Here's a final quirky thought. Imagine if these hairstyles could talk. What tales of love, rivalry, joy, and sorrow would they tell? From secret messages hidden in hairpins to the silent language of social signaling, each coiffure was a storyteller, a performer, and a protector. You've walked the lantern-lit streets, witnessed the skilled hands of Tokoyama, and felt the pulse of a society where beauty was a language and hair was its eloquent script. The courtesans' hairstyles were a delicate dance of tradition and innovation, a testament to human creativity flourishing within constraints. As you step back into the present, carrying these stories with you, you realize that the art of Edo's courtesan hairstyles is a timeless reminder of how culture, identity, and beauty intertwine an enduring legacy that continues to inspire and captivate. Thank you for joining this journey through history, mystery, and style. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts and locations in the comments. Until next time, may your own hair tell stories as rich and fascinating as those of Edo's courtesans.